I used to live in Montgomery County, man. You know what I mean? Montgomery County, Maryland. Shout out to everybody in Aspen Hill. Rockville Rams was goody. So being able to speak to Will Jawando, an attorney, activist, representative of over 1 million citizens in Montgomery County, Maryland, as a council member, is dope. Today on Stuck in Middle podcast. And I'm excited for it, man. We're going to ask him all the questions. You know what I mean? Like we got the elections coming in November too. And he recently just endorsed Senator and now potential VP of the United States of America. So we're going to ask him about that too. But stick around. We got so much to speak with Will Jawando. He was on the cover of Ayoo Magazine. It's dope. Appreciate y'all checking this. This is Stuck in Middle podcast, a platform for entrepreneurs, innovators, creators of African descent. Hit that subscribe button, man. We're going to drop the intro and get into the video. I'm Reflex, your host. Let's get it. So every level of government is important, right? But you chose the local level of, policies. Why did you choose the local level of government to, run it and start your career?
That's a great question, and thanks for having me on, Flex. I really appreciate it. And hello to all your listeners here in the U.S. and abroad and back home. Local government really, and I've worked at all the levels, right? So I worked for President Obama in the White House. I worked in Congress for Nancy Pelosi, and then I worked now I'm at the local level. And for 90% or more of what people deal with in their daily lives, it's really local elected officials. You're talking about schools, money for schools and school policy, roads, is there a pothole on my street? Police and fire, are they responding on time? Are they treating us fairly? Libraries, parks, all those things are funded through local government. And here in the county, we have 1.1 million people, for the top 10 most diverse cities in the country, a $6 billion budget. And I'm one of 9 people who decides how to spend that money to fund all those things, in addition to passing all the local laws and ordinances. So it's really a great way to have impact in the lives of real people. If I fund an after-school program, I get to see that program next year helping kids in our community. So so that's why I think it's important for people to really pay attention locally.
You were actually sworn in as a Montgomery County council member back in December 2018. What were some of your, if you can remember, what were some of your plans going in, and what have you actually be able to accomplish in 2 years now?
Yeah, going on 2 years. Yeah, and little did I know I'd be having to govern in the middle of a pandemic and
right.
Social unrest but my whole platform was about something I call the Montgomery County Promise. It's basically a version of the American dream, but here locally. When people come here, when my dad came here from Nigeria in 1970 to go to school and settled in Silver Spring, he was looking for the same thing that people of all races were looking for that came here 400 years before him. Someplace that you can be accepted, someplace that you can start a business and learn, a safe community, a welcoming community, good schools, those kind of quality of life things. And we know, you lived in Aspen Hill. Depending on where you live in this county, in this country, some of those things are more or less available to certain types of people in certain communities. And my whole platform was, we need to expand that Montgomery County Promise, those basic things, to everybody in our county, regardless of where they're from or where they live or what they look like or who they worship. And so that's things like equitable schools, funding for our schools. That's things like criminal justice reform, making sure that police treat everyone in our community with respect and don't target certain members. It's things like making sure there's equitable access to health care. And that's particularly important now in COVID. So making sure rent stays under control, So I've made progress on all those things. I've had bills related to criminal justice that have passed. I passed the first ever rent stabilization during COVID, where you can't raise rents right now because people can't afford. So I've done a number of things. I'm only about, like you said, a little less than 2 years, about 20 months in. But I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, our team, so far. We've got a lot more to do, though, obviously.
Yeah, you mentioned your father from Nigeria, and I remember your swearing in ceremony. You wore the abada, which was really clean, by the way, at
I
your
appreciate that.
ceremony. Why did you choose to wear that? And which is different from the traditional custom suit and tie. Why did you choose to get decked out in the abada traditional garment?
Well, it was a couple things. One, my dad had passed away the year just before, a few
Mm-hmm.
months before, and didn't get to see me get elected. He knew I was running, and if he were there, he would have been wearing an agbada. He would have been in traditional clothing, and so that was one thing. I wanted to honor him and honor that uh, part of my history and my legacy of my family. But I also wanted to say with a really loud voice, but by demonstrate for all the immigrants in Montgomery County, and not just the Montgomery County, the state of Maryland and the country, that you can be fully who you are. You can be fully American, and in my case, also fully Nigerian. You don't have to check one at the door. That's what America's about. And so in this county, 1 in 3 of our residents, 1 in 3, were born in another country. If you add their kids, like me, I was born here, but to an immigrant parent, you get up to about 45% of our population are either immigrant, first generation, or second generation. And so that's a huge part of who we are. Yet I was the first one ever to wear any type of traditional clothing in a government setting like that, is swearing into the office. And I just thought it was an important symbol. And I've heard from Chinese, Indian, South American, obviously African, Nigerian, West African in particular, about how that just meant so much to them to see someone in elected office in a very formal setting,
Mm-hmm.
being who they were and reflecting their heritage. So I thought that was really important to do for both those reasons.
And what side of the world is your mom from? America.
So
What part of
yeah,
America?
so my mom is from the Midwest. So my mom is from Kansas. She's from a farm town in the middle of Kansas. She's a white
Yeah,
woman from Kansas.
yeah.
Yeah, and so my dad came over to go to school and came to Kansas, the town she grew up in, Hayes, Kansas. They met there in school and got together, and they moved east
Mm-hmm.
seeking economic opportunity, but also more understanding for their interracial relationship. Because you can imagine in 1970 in Kansas, they weren't really happy about a Nigerian guy with a white woman in Kansas.
For sure, for sure. You're married?
Say it again. Yes, I'm
You,
married. Yeah, I'm married to a Jamaican Bermudian from New York, and we have 4 children, 3 girls and a boy.
yeah. Where did you go to college, and what did you study?
So I started out at North Carolina Central, which is a historically black college in Durham, North Carolina, and then I transferred to Catholic University and finished there, and studied sociology undergrad. And which had a big impact on me, how people interact, inequities in our society. And then I went to law school at Catholic University, the Columbus School of Law as well. I did a joint program there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been pretty local other than that brief stint
Yeah.
in North Carolina.
At what point in life though did you figure, you had a passion for politics and then started to want to pursue that as a career?
I wasn't one of these people that said, I'm going to be a politician, I'm going to run for it. That wasn't my thing. I just, it found me and I found it. And I think I can trace it back to when I was just growing up here in Montgomery County, and you'll relate to this. I just saw things that weren't equal. Like I grew up in Long Branch in the Quebec Terrace area, which is a low income immigrant area here in Silver Spring. And when I was a teenager, I lost one of my best friends to gun violence. He was also an immigrant kid. And it made me analyze some of these inequities. Like, why didn't he have an after school program? Why did his mom have to work 2 low wage jobs? Why was his dad incarcerated for, all these things that are connected to systems and policy led to his bad outcome. And that stuck with me. And I didn't know I was going to turn it into being into politics or public policy. But as I kept going, I saw that as a big lever. If you want to change these policies, if I want to fund after school programs, if I want to make sure that there's a living wage so that people like his mom can work one job and get home and be with their families. If I want to make transportation better, those are public policy decisions.
Right.
And that's why I ended up pursuing that. And I worked 10 years as a staff person at the federal level, between the Department of Education and state and White House and Congress. And then I went locally because I thought I could have an impact, in my backyard where I grew up.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned earlier, the pandemic, getting into office, right at the heels of a pandemic, something we've had to deal with in a global level, a national level, and all the way down to, a local level. How, in your view, do you think Montgomery County has handled the coronavirus, and the state of Maryland for that matter?
Well, I'm very proud of what we've done in Montgomery County. We've been slower to open, and that's frustrating for a lot of people, and I understand that. But as a result, we have seen, to be as large as we are, the largest jurisdiction in the state. We have 1.1 million of the 6 million people in Maryland, and to have some of the lowest rates of transmission, and we have some of the biggest cities too, right? And so I think we've proceeded with caution, looked at data, and let that drive our decision making, unlike what you're seeing in other states and at the federal level. So I think we've done well. We're not out of the woods yet, though. This virus is going to come back. It's already here, but in the fall, it's going to be harder to be outside and socially distanced. So we're really going to have to double down. People are tired, getting fatigued. So it's going to be a long haul to get through the rest of the year. And hopefully vaccines come online. We have several Montgomery County companies that are working on some of the major vaccines. And so we're working. I'm proud of what we've done. I think the state of Maryland started off doing a good job, Governor Hogan, but then he started getting into politics and playing around with the schools and with our elections and not really staying true to just listening to scientists and letting that be the basis. And that's unfortunate, but we're going to do what we can here in the state, in the county, to make sure we keep people safe.
Just for educational purposes here, how long is a council member in tenure for, and what specific jurisdiction do you represent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am an at-large member, which means I represent the whole county. So I'm elected countywide. The council has 9 members, 5 are districts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they basically go west to east. District 1 is like Bethesda. District 5 is Briggs Cheney, and then everything in between. And there are 5 district members and 4 at-large members, and I'm one of the at-large. Actually, the only Black person to be elected at-large. And so I represent everyone in the county. Everyone gets to vote for me, and I represent all the areas. So I'm not just one specific area; I'm the whole area. And the term is for 4 years, and you can serve up to 3 terms because of the term limit. So I'm in my 2nd year of the first term.
Right, so what I'm saying, we're looking to get you back in office here in a couple of years.
That's right.
One of the only Blacks. But in what capacity is your job carried out, though? Just getting into the meat and potato of things, like what does a council member actually do? I know you represent the people in the local government, actually making policies that actually affect us in a very local capacity. But just getting into the weed of things, and what do you actually do and carry out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So council member, we're responsible for spending the budget that you and I are taxpayer dollars. And I said that's about $6 billion every year. I think a lot of people are surprised. That's bigger than 4 state budgets. It's a lot of money. And there's 9 people who decide how to spend that money, and I'm one of them. And goes to things like schools and public safety and roads and libraries and parks and the like. And then we pass the laws, so the rules of the county. So what can our people do and not do? What can our police do and not do? What are the rules that we abide ourselves by here in this society? And then we also pass zoning, which is something people don't know about a lot. Like so when you see that big high-rise apartment, they have to come to us to get approval to build that. And that's another big part of our authority, is setting the limits on what can be built where, how big it can be, how much affordable housing needs to be in it, and all those types of things. So we have pretty significant authority, again, for this county.
Montgomery County alone, in Maryland, just at large is one of the most diverse states. Montgomery County alone is one of the most diverse counties, I think, by my estimation, in the nation.
Yeah.
But when we get down into it, I think there is a disparity in not only education but also housing. And you mentioned housing. How can we begin to bridge, that gap as far as affordable housing, or just people being able to afford houses in jurisdictions and places that they can afford and should be able to live in.
Yeah, it's a great question. And housing is one of those things that's, is a human right? You can't, everything else in your life, if you don't have someplace where you can go and be safe and your head down,
Mm-hmm.
particularly for children, someplace that's stable and, safe and clean, that's a huge deal. And this is an expensive county, an expensive state to live in.
Right.
And we're segregated, right? And socioeconomically, racial, ethnically. We've got a large percentage of our Black and African immigrant population in the eastern part of the county, some in the up county. And then we have our white population in the western and upper parts. And then you got some, mixes in the middle. As you said, we have 4 of the top 10 most diverse cities in the country are in Montgomery County: Silver Spring, Gaithersburg, Germantown, and Rockville. And that's a great thing. But with that becomes responsibility to make sure everyone has access. And so a couple things we need to do. We need to make sure when new buildings are built, mm-hmm. that there are high requirements on the developer to build a respectable and amount of affordable units. And we have a law in the county that requires them to build 12.5%. So if there's 100 units in an apartment, 12 and a half of them have to be moderately priced, but that level is about $60,000 a year. There's a lot of people making less than that. So we need to have different levels of affordability. That's one thing, and I'm working on that. We also need to control how much rents can go up in any given year. And that's something that we have now through COVID. I was able to temporarily hold those, but I think we need to look at that going forward, because that's a big concern for people. Your rent shouldn't go up 10, 20% in 1 year, right. Can't afford it. Right. Yeah. And then I think the other thing we need to do is we need different types of housing, right? We don't just need high rise 1-bedrooms or single family homes. We need stuff in the middle. We need like duplexes and triplexes and quads and smaller things that people can buy that are more affordable. Different types of housing stock. And I think if you do all those things, have requirements, regulations, incentivize different types of housing stock, try to hold down rents, give help for closing costs and down payment assistance for people who want to buy homes, townhomes, or houses. If you do all those things, I think you can start to work on it. And then we got to raise wages, right? We got to make sure people can earn a job, whatever job they're doing, make enough to live here, right. So that's part of it too.
Yeah, because not proud to say one of the reasons why I live in Lower now on the other side of Maryland and Prince George is because the rent was getting a little too high. Right. Yeah. So but switching gears a little bit here, you got Senator Kamala Harris endorsement when you were running for office, and then now endorsing her as the potential, the first female VP in the nation, in the biggest nation in the world. What do you see in her that makes you think she's fit for the job, and reciprocate when she's showing you to be able to endorse you when you're running for office?
Yes, Kamala Harris, Senator Harris is I'm fortunate to know her personally and have worked with her. She cares about people, and particularly she understands the immigrant story, which is really the American story. Unless you're indigenous person, someone came here on some boat at some point, or some plane at some point in time. Right. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother, and she's worked hard as a senator and as a prosecutor and attorney general to uphold the rule of law. But the most important thing is she cares about people. She can connect with people. She has empathy. Joe Biden too. I worked in the White House with him. He might not get every answer right, but he knows at the end of the day, he cares for people. And that's what we need now more than ever. We need people who are going to try to find solutions, but from a place of being radically empathetic, from caring about what other people are going through. And that's what I know that Senator Harris and Vice President Biden will do. I was honored to get her endorsement. She didn't have to do that in a race like mine at the local level, but I think it speaks to the fact that she sees it important to reach back and to help people who are coming behind and who are trying to do the right thing and help their residents and constituents as well.
Yeah, and in order for her, former Vice President Joe Biden to get in office, people have to get out and vote. And I saw you had a strong rebuke for Governor Larry Hogan on, the reopening of public and private schools, and still being in the, hills of the pandemic here. What are your views on the mail-in ballot? The whole, it's a big topic of debate right now. What do you think how do you think that should be handled as far as mail-in ballots and the virus that we're still facing right now?
Well, the number one thing is, if you request a mail-in ballot, you should have received a form in the mail if you're registered to vote to do so. If you didn't, you can go on the Board of Elections website and request it. That's the number one thing, because we want to make sure that you're able to vote. We expect long lines on election day. So request that ballot. You have to send it in and request it. You can do it online with a driver's license or a state issued ID. The problem I have with what Larry Hogan did, our governor, is in the primary, if you remember in June, everyone got a ballot in the mail. Right. It was sent out to everybody no matter what, because we were trying to discourage people from risk their health. And so now, in the same election cycle, you're not doing that, and you didn't tell anybody. And so a lot of people that I talk to, and probably people that are listening, if you live in Maryland, you think you're getting a ballot, but you're not unless you request it. And so that is a tactic that's been used to suppress the vote, and it puts people at risk, and I suspect that you have to turn out. And if you do have to show up and vote on election day, there's going to be early voting centers. There's going to be places where you can put your ballot, drop it off. But if you vote on election day, wear a mask, socially distance. But I was upset with them because it's a way of disenfranchising and confusing voters. Mm-hmm. If you did it in the primary in June, you should do it in November, so people expect the same behavior. And with the attacks on the Postal Service by the president, our Board of Elections and our Postal Service is saying they might not be able to get all the ballots out to people and back in time for them to be counted. So that's a big problem, and we've seen that in other states. So that was the argument I was having with the governor. I just really don't think that was the right action. But no matter what happens, and we've always done this as Black people of color, we've got to get out and vote one way or the other. So request your ballot now. You can still get it. We've got 50-something days to the election. Request your ballot, but if you have to show up and do it in a safe way.
Definitely. Yesterday, I believe it was last night, you had a town hall, or hosted a town hall on data on policing. This nation is blessed to be as diverse as it is. And Montgomery County, as far as when I lived there, is also, I think I felt safe living there in police to, minority relations. Not living in Montgomery County right now, I don't really know what the data is. What do those data look like as far as, what you saw in the town hall? And also, how can we combat the disparity relationships between the public and police, or those interactions in the local level, and also spreading in the national level?
Sure. Yeah. Police community relations are obviously extremely important. We are in the midst of a worldwide protests on the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and we've had people here. We've had African immigrant men killed here in Montgomery County. Robert White, Emmanuel Okutunga in 2011. Robert White 2 years ago, walking in his neighborhood unarmed. Most recently, Fanon Berhe, an Eritrean young man who was killed having a mental health issue in front of his house in White Oak. And then we have disproportionate data. Almost 60% of the interactions that police have that have had use of force, so where force is used, were against African Americans. And African American Black people only represent 18% of the population. Half of the people arrested in the whole county in 2018 were Black. Again, we represent 18% of the population. Over a third, 34% of the people pulled over in the county are Black. You're 8 times more likely to get pulled over in Bethesda as a black person than a white person. So there's a whole, even though white people dramatically outnumber black people in Bethesda. So we have some issues. I would agree with you that on balance, our police department, we have a good police department, but that doesn't mean we don't have issues and that we don't have disparities, because we do. Depending on who you are in this county and in this country, you experience policing differently. And my theory has been we need to change the incentive structure, de-emphasize arrests and tickets, and emphasize positive measures. We need to have better accountability and transparency. We need to focus more on who we're hiring, make sure and how they're trained. And all those things, if we do them all together, I think can lead to a more equitable system where police aren't involved in things they shouldn't be. They don't need to be responding when someone's dealing with a mental health crisis, or someone's experiencing homelessness, or someone has a substance abuse issue. There are trained professionals that can be deployed instead of those officers, because we know if an interaction happens, there's more likely that harm can happen, right? And so we need to make sure that we limit that. And I've also been working on like getting police out of our schools to focus our kids on the things they need. I think so. We need to reimagine what public safety is, and that'll mean that we have to reallocate dollars and do things differently. But I think we have an opportunity in Montgomery County to really be a leader on that.
Yeah. So would what do you see in response to people calling for defunding the police? I think your answer was in what you just said now, but just for clarity.
Yeah, because you can cut it up and take what you want.
No.
Yeah, on the defunding police, as I said, I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post
definitely, yes,
a little while ago, and to me, what we really need is reimagining what public safety and policing is, and that was the title of my town hall earlier this week. Mm-hmm. And that will include reallocating resources, right? And so if police officers aren't in our schools in an enforcement capacity, school resource officers, that's $3 million a year we can take and use for nurses or counselors or other programs for our students that are going to help keep them out of trouble and minimize the need for police, right? And so that's what it's about when you shift money. If we don't have to deploy police when there's a homeless person or someone who has a mental health issue, and we can deploy a counselor or a medic or a crisis intervention worker, that money should go to Health and Human Services to support those types of programs, and the police don't need it. We need our police focused on violent crime. Of all the 911 calls that happen, only 10% are related to violent crime. And I think we need to hone in on those things and then use other mechanisms that don't necessarily require police. And that will mean we need to move funding. But I do not support saying we're going to eliminate the police. There is a role for police in public safety. We just need to change the form and the function of what they do, and then make sure that there's transparency and accountability as well.
Yeah, we got a council member for just a few more minutes here. Got just a couple of questions, Steph. But definitely want to thank everybody who's watching on YouTube or listening in your car, doing your dishes or whatever. This is Stuck in Middle Podcast. We got council member Will Jawando on. He is an activist, attorney, and a council member for over 1 million people in the Montgomery County, Maryland area. We appreciate you, by the way, Councilman, for taking this time to speak with us at just the young and tender age of 38. What does the political future for you look like? You know what I mean? What's next for you? I don't know if you think about that right now, or you're just like, let me get through this term first.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you for saying I'm young at 38. My goal has always been to do a good job where I'm at and grow where I'm planted. And that's what I'm focused on right now, representing the 1.1 million people here in the county. I think if I have an opportunity to help them, help our residents, help the state, and be a model and for the other parts of the country, and then we'll see what happens. You always have to look for opportunities, what God wants you to do next. I think I'm in a good position now, and I do know that the public policy in public service is always going to be a big part of what I care about. And so I hope I have continued opportunities in the future to continue to do that. And we'll see where it takes me.
Well, it's two-part question here. What is the hardest part about being a council member? What is your proudest moment since so far since being sworn in?
Oh, wow. Those are tough questions. The hardest part about being a council member, I think, is sometimes dealing with the slowness of bureaucracy, right? Because there are urgent needs. There are kids tonight that are going to go home, that are going home hungry. And I would like to move more urgently, help them. There's seniors in our community that are in nursing homes that don't have the best health standards. I think about them, and so we're doing things to help. But sometimes it takes longer than I'd like. And then also breaking down these systems of historic inequities. Look, we're operating in a caste system where enforced by racism, where Black folks have been at the bottom for hundreds of years, and trying to disentangle this system from that is challenging, right? And it takes work. So that can be frustrating at times, but I'm also blessed to be in a position to do that. As far as my proudest moment, there's many. I think, when I was able to pass this landmark use of force bill, where we changed the standard for use of deadly force from reasonable to necessary after all other options are exhausted, and we required a duty to intervene, and we limited no-knock warrants. Really comprehensive bill that is going to help save people's lives and reduce harm. I was really proud when we did that in June, and with my colleagues, and it reminded me why I'm here. And I think a big part of why I'm in this office right now is to represent all of our residents, because when we represent everybody and help every community, that lifts up the whole community, and that requires us to go at inequities. So this was an example of that. I've done a lot of other things I'm proud of, but I would have to say that's one recently that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and one that personally speaking that also led us to you, and again we appreciate you speaking with us today, is being on the cover of Ayoo Magazine. Shout out to Leslie and the good folks at Ayoo Spaces. How was that experience like for you?
It was cool. I didn't know I was going to be on the cover. I thought, I just thought I was one of the people being highlighted, and I appreciate Leslie for all the work. There's some great people that are doing great things in that magazine for our community and the African diaspora. And it's an honor. I think at the moment in time we're in, we need leadership in every arena, in the business community, and in government, in public policy. And so I'm just proud to be doing my part in trying to improve life for African immigrants, but also for everyone in our community. So I appreciate Leslie and Ayoo for recognizing that and featuring me.
Yeah, I know your schedule is busy. I don't know, what it's like, to find time to, be a family man, and also, to just enjoy life as well. I did see you in the comments in one of the versus battles, and so I'm asking you now, who you think is gonna win between Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight coming up tomorrow in the versus battle? Will you be watching, and who you rooting for?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. And thank God for versus during this pandemic, man. It's been. I'm going to have to go with Patti LaBelle. I think but it's tough. That's a close one. They both got so many good songs, and I'm going to be tuning into that. I actually have an old soul. My first concert was a James Brown concert. So, so I like that kind of music, and but we'll see who, how they do. But, that's a tough group. It's gonna be a lot of classics.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you? Who do you think?
Man, they're both legends, and so I'm just gonna be in there watching for the great music and the great vibes, and I would just be enjoying the moment.
We need to do an Afrobeats one. We need to.
I know we need to do like a Whiskey and Davido or something like that.
Yeah, that would be good. We might have to make that happen on. Start talking about that.
Definitely. Last question for you here, as you know, like you said, being in touch with your heritage, which I definitely appreciate. Any plans for Nigeria in the future, even if it's just visiting, or investing back home? What do you have for back home?
Yeah, well, all my family, my dad, as I said, passed away, but my uncles and my aunt and my cousins all live in Nigeria for the most part. I was there in 2019 or 2018 for Christmas, and I was planning a trip for next year. Hopefully, I'll be able to do it to try to take my whole family over. We have a family house there, so it's really important to me that they know where they're from, their ancestry, and that there's some, commerce between, right? We know a lot of African immigrants and all immigrants send money back home, but how do we strengthen those bonds? And I think I firmly believe that the stronger African immigrants are here in the U.S., in the diaspora, the stronger the continent will be. By virtue of those relationships, whether it be funding business opportunities or people moving back and starting businesses or working in public health. I think that's an important part of that mix. And that's why I was the co-founder of an organization here called the African Immigrant Caucus, which tries to organize the African immigrant community here to make sure that their political voice is heard. So I'll continue to do those types of things, and hopefully next year with the travel, we'll be able to get over there and visit. But I see it as a lifelong relationship. If I'm a Nigerian American, and that's who I am, and I'm both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, we always like to ask, at the end of every interview, how people can get in contact with our guests. But person of your stature, do you have an open door policy, and how can people get in contact with you?
No, yeah, I mean, I my job is to respond to folks, and I'd ask for grace. Sometimes it takes a while because we get a lot of people. But if you social media is good. You're at Will Jawando, WILLJAWANDO. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on any of those, and or you can just go to my website, Councilmember Will Jawando page. If you just type Councilmember Will Jawando, it'll come up on Google, and send me an email that way. But happy to respond. If there's anything my office can do to help for our residents, let me know.
Definitely. Well, appreciate you taking the time to speak to us here at Stock Community, sir.
Thanks for having me, man, and congrats on this this podcast. I look forward to listening to all the episodes going forward.
Thank you so much. Listen, if you heard what you liked or saw what you heard, or like what you saw, whatever it is, hit that subscribe button and the ringer so you get updates every time we drop something new. Again, this is Stock Community Podcast, a platform for entrepreneurs, innovators, creators of African descent. Where you hear stories, ideas, and experiences of how we can break the mold. SITMpodcast237@gmail.com is the email. Hit us up. New blog post dropping today. AK, if you were good, shout out to Achiri, shout out to the whole team. And we are out.